Oh, look at that. A beautiful start to the day here. It's not very often that you start off a Monday feeling really good about yourself, but that's how I feel looking at that. Maybe not so much in Eskimos land. Derek Van Diest of the Sun joining me this morning, and of course we're talking about the green and gold's weekend, or maybe the black and blue, depending on how you want to color the things. Of course, big thing coming into the preseason game against this past weekend was that they had a quarterback situation. Of course, Nichols from last year obviously injured his ankle, looking to redeem himself. Mike Riley brought in from BC, and then this happened.
Make the tackle. Just got dumped near the goal line right at the end of the play.
And Matt Nichols going down with an apparent knee injury. We still don't really know exactly the extent, except to say that suddenly a quarterback controversy is no longer kind of an anticlimactic end to it. So what's your take on all this?
Well, it's kind of interesting because that's the whole story coming into the season. Obviously last year, they're still trying to recover from the Ricky Ray trade, the Edmonton Eskimos are. And last year, obviously, they had this quarterback carousel. They couldn't find the quarterback. Stephen Giles was a starter. He lost his job. In came Matt Nichols, and he did well towards the end of the year, but then he had that gruesome injury, of course, in the Eastern semifinal. So he basically battled back all off-season, trying to get back into form, trying to get back into shape, and he gets back, and he's ready to battle for the starting job with Mike Riley, who they brought in from the BC Lions. And 1 quarter into the first preseason game, he goes down with a knee injury. So it looks like the team is now Mike Riley's to take. It's his ball now, and basically he's going to get the start against the BC Lions in the final preseason game. If he does well, which everyone's expecting to do well, he'll probably get the start in week 1 of the CFL season. But it's a long season. You never know what can happen if Matt Nichols will be able to make a comeback. They haven't said how long the injury is going to be, but it doesn't look like it's season ending anyway.
No, it was a small sample size over the weekend on Friday, and I guess the question becomes, what's your takeaway from what Riley was able to do out there? Of course, had the 1 touchdown pass to Isaiah Sweeney in the limited amount of time before we saw Kerry Joseph and the backups.
Well, it's the thing. It's tough to gauge on just the 1 preseason game because, one, he came in after Matt Nichols, so he's playing against other teams' backups as well. He's not playing against starters. There's a lot of starters that actually sat out that first game. It's really interesting in the CFL where they only have the 2 weeks. Basically, it's all about timing, and it's all about assessing a lot of players that are on the bubble. And I think that's what we saw on Friday. They basically had a couple of reps, the first team quarterbacks, and then he went in there. He looked like the Mike Riley we've seen before in the past, poised in the pocket, a leadership type of quarterback. But I think you'll probably get a better indication this week when he's starting at home against BC, when he'll go up against some starters to see what he can actually do.
And no doubt motivation against his former squad as well. Of course, the Nichols injury, not the only one to hit the Eskimos over the weekend. We saw that running back and return man Tavoy Moore also suffering a knee injury. Less significant maybe in terms of the overall game, but still kind of a blow for the team.
It is, because this is a guy that they expected to return punts and returns kicks for them and kind of give them some depth in the backfield. Hugh Charles will be the number 1 guy probably this year going forward. They lost Jerome Messam, they lost Corey Boyd. And so Hugh Charles will probably be the guy to get the majority of the reps. But, Tavoy Moore is going to be a guy that could fill in. And he's kind of a guy that can return kicks and give him good field position in that regard. And it looked like he got hurt 3 plays into the game. So it's really, really a tough break for him because I think a lot of people were kind of looking forward to see what he could do. And hopefully the injury is not long-term and he'll be able to get back at that.
I think the update was it's an indefinite injury, which of course can mean, for 1 week to, the end of time for all we know.
Well, the thing is the Eskimos this year being very, very quiet about the injuries and their status in this year. They're being very secretive this year. So it's kind of interesting, tough to get anything out of there.
So we've been focusing, I guess, on the offensive side of the ball. Take a look on the defensive side. Any takeaways that you can speak of about what you saw in that game? I mean, a couple sacks. They only gave up the 1 offensive score in the game. So do you see anything positive coming out of that?
I think so. I think it's going to be a very, very aggressive defense this year. Obviously, they brought in Odell Willis, and that's going to be a very interesting see how he kind of fits in the mix. J.C. Sherritt is back. Of course, he wasn't in the lineup the other day, but he's back. And I think defensively, the Eskimos, that's going to be their strength. That was their strength last year. I think it's going to be their strength this year. They have a very good defensive line. They have a very good linebacking core, and I think last year they really had to hold opponents under 20 points, or the Eskimos weren't going to win. I think they'll get more support from the offense this year, but I still think they're capable of really limiting what they give up, and I think it's going to be basically like we saw this week. It's going to be special teams and offensively they got to trying not to give up points, and I think defensively the team will be just
All right, really quickly, we got to go to break, but I'm going to ask you right now. Bodog.com letting out their Grey Cup predictions for the season. They have the Eskimos listed only better than the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Fair or false?
I think it's false. I think the big question there is the quarterback. They don't know who. Well, when you don't know who your starting quarterback is going into the season, I think we know now it's going to be Mike Riley. There's always uncertainty there, and if they had a veteran starting quarterback, I think those odds would be a little better. But I think it's a little unfair. I think defensively is a good team, and they did make the playoffs last year. As bad as the year was, they did make the playoffs last year, and I think there's going to be improvement on them this year.
There you go. Like the start to this Monday morning outside, sunny side, with the forecast for the Edmonton Eskimos season, courtesy of Derek Van Diest of the Edmonton Sun. We'd love to hear what you think about the Eskimos' odds going into the final preseason game. You can check in with us at breakfasttelevision.ca and on our Facebook page. More BT after the break.